Hey everyone, this is Xith, and in today's video we'll be conversing about the new teaser trailer for the Witcher series that has been widely awaited for months after its announcement. I'll swiftly analyze the trailer and accordingly form an opinion on what we should realistically expect next from the series. Note that I'm quite critical of this trailer, so take my discussion on it with a grain of salt. This in no way indicates that I'm completely negative in regards to the trailer and its content. I'm just slightly disappointed by how it was presented, not how the series itself will probably play out, mainly because you can't predict how something will glue itself together without experiencing the many facets that creates the end product. The Witcher series itself, after its announcement and before this trailer, was controversial in a sense. The teaser images and leaked footage we've been given before today's teaser trailer dropped was quite underwhelming, and had people largely divided on its future popularity. You had the Nilfgaardian armor incident, which showcased glorified and etched canvas bags used as armor for the Nilfgaardian army, which initially worried a lot of people. The released teaser picture of Henry Cavill as Geralt overlooking a cliff was actually the picture that had people questioning even their own perception of what they wanted Geralt to be portrayed as, even though the books state that Geralt owns the body of a sinewy man, lean and very toned, something Henry Cavill just does not resemble in the footage we've been shown. First off, before I analyze the trailer and critically bash on the hard work of others, I'll gladly point out how content I am that I resonate with Geralt's casting choice, Henry Cavill. Even though his body doesn't really retain to Geralt's authentic look, the facial features perfectly capture the woven Witcher himself, even when they display how potent alchemical Witcher potions are at the end of the trailer. Now, moving on to the actual trailer and the content that relates to the books. The beginning sequences seem to showcase Geralt walking through a town cautiously/curiously, after which he is seen fighting a man of similar martial capabilities and gear. After this, we're met with a scene that may have a recurring theme to it. It was either a showcase of a wounded Geralt walking off to be persecuted for a crime, or even just a sight of what followed after Geralt's fight with that aforementioned man in the scene prior. Nonetheless, the next sequence is all about Yennefer's apparent deformities before her current self was a thing. All the meanwhile, Ciri is seen accompanied by the Dryads of Brokilon Forest, which is a demographic of nymphs that appear specifically in the book called The Sword of Destiny. Since not many of these scenes have any particularly special nuggets of information, I'll only summarize what I found quite interesting and book references that made a debut. Tissaia the Vry, or Vri, is also seen mentoring Yennefer before her transformation, and this does indeed confirm that Tissaia will play a huge part in the plot leading up to Yennefer's rise to power as a sorceress. A common theme throughout this trailer is the appearance of Sintra and its culture, which will be apparent once we delve deeper. Istred, who was Yennefer's lover in later books, also makes an appearance here, lecturing deformed Yennefer on the importance of perspective and the twisted nature of men. The Magical Academy of Aretuza, Thanedd Island, and the Tower of Gull are also all showcased in this trailer, indicating that this was from where Tissaia operated and taught. A small display of the burning sigil of Sintra is definitely tied to the First Nilfgaard War, which saw through the massacre of Sintra and the First Nilfgaard War with the North. After a couple of scenes portraying Yennefer's struggle to cope with her deformities, we're met with a sequence of scenes where Geralt's apparent involvement comes to light. Geralt is seen wielding a chain against what seems like a monster of unknown origins, and after many more filler scenes, an abnormal hand seems to creep its way into the shot, presumably that of the monster Geralt was fighting beforehand. Many have speculated that this monster might be a Striga after all, and to many of our surprises, Triss Merigold from the books makes a debut in this trailer, looking rather odd, but accordingly fitting nonetheless. She approaches Geralt with the ever-growing dilemma of Witchers yearning for a simpler life, a life they've extensively trained for, yet it's never as transparent as one would like to believe. Since I actually want this video to be shorter than what I'm spiraling into, I'll quickly go over the rest. Nobility is highly emphasized throughout series scenes, and even Geralt's advised to seize the opportunity that he has been given, specifically by a druid named Mousesack. Ciri, once again, appears to be wandering the sands of a desert, and this could in fact be the Korath Desert that appeared in later books. We're also met with Yennefer's actual transformation and Tissia empowering her to grapple into what she has become and who she really is. Next, we're greeted by a mass swarm of Nilfgaardian soldiers engaging in combat with Cintrian forces, with Queen Calanthe, the Lioness of Cintra, participating in the Battle of Sodden Hill. The sacking of Cintra would soon be displayed, and this, in the books, would have ended with a 4-day siege on the castle of Cintra itself. Ciri would be seen closing her eyes during what seemed like a big explosion, and not shortly after, her mother, Princess Pavetta, would wreak havoc by telepathically pushing aside many men during a banquet we'll unravel shortly. Ciri would then be seen talking to her dying grandmother, Queen Calanthe, supposedly during the siege of the castle I mentioned earlier. The remaining snippets would include another shot of the monster and a fight at the banquet of a short story Andrzej Sapkowski wrote called A Question of Price, where Cintrian forces fought the cursed Prince Dunny of Erlenwald, or who we would know as Emir var Emrys. Geralt's conflict with Renfri's band from another one of Andrzej's short stories called The Lesser Evil was also included by the end, that is, before we got to see the effectiveness of Yennefer's magical prowess. The trailer ends in a relatively badass manner, something all avid fans of the Witcher universe adore, that is, Geralt facing off against a predatorial behemoth whilst knocking back and enduring the potency of a deadly concoction. To sum it all up, we're presented with a story that follows 2 books, The Last Wish and The Sword of Destiny, which is great seeing as how both of those are timeless classics and would look great visualized. How they set this trailer up was disappointing, and I believe this mainly stems from a couple of noteworthy issues. First off, how they've casted individual characters. For example, Freya Allan or Ciri looks too generic and forgettable, but I'll admit that she does mimic children of Slavic/Polish descent, which is a beneficial point towards the authenticity of the series, but I can assure you that there could have been better and more captivating actors to play Ciri. I'm gonna circle back and include both Triss and Yennefer in this argument of mine, with a more critical outlook on Triss however. Triss was in fact much younger than Yennefer during the events in the trailer, and seeing as how she mimics a decrepit priestess more than a young, luscious sorceress is beyond me. Yennefer's casting choice on the other hand lacked distinct facial features that Sapkowski specifically implied throughout the books, but even then, I'm just nitpicking, so it doesn't really matter. One issue I have with the series itself and not the trailer is the heavy absence of Slavic and Polish folklore that the books were obviously inspired from. The characters themselves look too westernized to serve the purpose of portraying the folklore properly. Not to say that it isn't allowed, but it still harms the authenticity and presentability of the lore people fell in love with. Another thing this series seems to be missing is a lack of emphasis put on the medieval Central European aesthetic that initially inspired the author, and most likely what he had in mind during his writing process. From what I've garnered online, people are insulted in a sense, which is not how I feel, but I can understand what led them to that conclusion, even though I personally don't find it as insulting. My first impressions of the trailer were indeed distasteful, and I felt as if I was watching a professional fan-made trailer, with Bollywood costumes and below-average CGI. But even then, it isn't as bad as I make it seem, it's just that it felt cheap and tacky, far from what I've expected. But truthfully, my altered and bitter expectations aren't yours to carry, nor to follow. So if you genuinely enjoyed what the trailer had to offer, I suggest supporting the series and the creators of this series, or at least give them constructive feedback on how they could improve upon their final product. My somewhat passive-aggressive rant has indeed been concluded, and I hope you enjoyed the video and have learned something if you haven't read the books. But be sure to, for the series itself will contain numerous references and characters from the books. Regardless, I truly can't wait for it to release.